Hello guys, NautoAce here, and finally I'm going to give my personal thoughts on Krohnen for King of Fighter 15, aka K49. Yes, I know I am very late on this party, but like I said on my previous video on that rewind, that at a time I was gonna actually do it after it was revealed on the Game Awards, but I said maybe I'll wait for the full reveal trailer and then the character director to give an insight about Krohnen. And at the time I'm like, well, it doesn't really say much, so I said I'm gonna wait for their story, both Krohnen and K. And at that point, and I'm like, yeah, this is definitely K49. So yes, a lot of people who gave their thoughts, I do agree. So it's kind of like, sort of, to some extent, I might be just repeating what they're saying. However, there is something interesting that I did notice that most of them don't really mention, and that is SNK Playmore and SNK Entertainment. Yeah, so a little backstory here is that in 2000, unfortunately, SNK filed for bankruptcy due to, well, you guessed it, poor sales. One of them because of quote-unquote emulator, but that's a different story. But they went bankrupt, so for a while they had to sell off their IP to different companies. And for the King of Fighters, for both 2001 and 2002, they sold it off to Ellen. They're the developer for those games. And with that, they actually did their own story, the conclusion of the NES saga. So that's basically what happened to SNK. And then later on, when the founder of SNK created a company called Playmore, he bought back all the company and formed SNK Playmore. It's basically, think of it as the dark side of SNK, because, and I did talk about this before in my main channel, the commentary on SNK versus Capcom Chaos. They were basically being thick-headed to a point that they refused to release their games, their SNK games, on the PS2 in the US due to price issue, because they were trying to sort of prove a point that just because it's 2D doesn't mean it's bad, but that's what happened there. And then after a while, they end up just not doing any new games. They were just porting the games to Steam, which is actually good. They made them money. And to some extent, they end up, for whatever reason, Pachinko, until, and I did talk about this, a Chinese conglomerate bought SNK and they formed SNK Entertainment. So that's why. So there's two types of SNK, Playmore and Entertainment, and each of that part, each one of them have a different perspective about K49. So I'm surprised that none of them kind of talk about it, because it's sort of kind of like a more in-depth history about what's the deal with K49, why you see the forbidden character, what's going on, was there actually any lawsuit, which is spoiler. A lot of people already said, and I do agree 100%, is that no, there was no any attempt of lawsuit for plagiarism about K49. There isn't, no, nothing, shape or form. So okay, so that's the backstory of the people I'm surprised they didn't say was Playmore and Entertainment. Alright, so with that, of course, I'm going to also talk my perspective of the history, the business behind what happened with K49 and what it is. So I did mention about it that Playmore were not fans of K49. Let me kind of expand on this. So what happened was, after Playmore bought back the IP with SNK, they also had a problem with Ellen. So of course, 2001, 2002 was Ellen, like I said before, and they created their own characters, which are of course K49, Angel, Melee, Ignis, and I guess Original Zero to some extent. But from what I understand, that was based on Clone Zero because of the story-wise. But the most for sort of an elite property, like I said, was Melee, Angel, Ignis, and K49. So when they got the IP for the King Fighter back, there was a lot of rumor that anything that owned or created by Elliot, they weren't going to use it. Because one of the example what happened was King of Fighter Neo Wave for the Xbox, they removed any character that's based on Elliot. So no Angel, no May Leaf in that one. And so people kind of said, well, I guess SNK Playmore technically just don't have the license and they just couldn't use it because, again, it's owned by Elliot. That's basically what people are saying. So moving forward for that one, the story is when Entertainment got the right for SNK, they bought it from Playmore. One of the left field shocker to me, and I did talk about it before, was that Angel was in King of Fighter 14. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Aren't they property of Elliot? But apparently that wasn't really the case, because even so it was owned by Elliot, SNK still have ownership to some extent, and they just say, might as well use it. Let's put Angel back. So I'm like, wow, Angel in 3D. So that's like, psh. And when you say, what about King of Fighter 2002 Unlimited Match? Basically, it was just part of the NES cartel, and they're just following suit to 2002. So a little bit tricky there, but I did mention that about that one is they got rid of K49 and they replaced it with Nameless because they said, the moveset is good, but we don't really like the character, so we're just going to change to another character. Again, it's kind of like showing a hint that, hey, look, nobody likes K49. Again, that's Playmore there. Alright, so that's a little bit of why it's sort of a confusion of SNK don't have the rights with Elliot character. Well, that wasn't the case. Now we're going to move to the history of what happened to K49. So the thing is that a lot of people said Elliot are a fan of Akira. You're a fan of the anime Akira. That's the reason why K49 was based on Akira, to a point that even the voice actor, the Japanese one, voiced K49. And another teaser is Kusanagi in 2002 is voiced by Kanade, supposed to be the hero for Akira. I'm not a fan of the movie, but I know to some extent what it is. So you kind of hint her like, wait a minute. So why is there a lawsuit if the voice actors are willing to do it? Because there's another thing. There was even report that some people said that Elliot actually asked permission, can we do a homage to Akira? And the people behind Akira said, yeah, sure, why not? Video game version. So they gave them permission. So if they gave them permission, then where's the lawsuit coming from? That's the problem. They're like, where is it coming from that people keep saying? Because to some extent, again, there isn't, because again, like I said, the people behind the Akira anime movie, they were cool. Like, there was no intention of suing Elliot for it. Again, so, but what really happened, I did mention this before, is that when Playmore got it right, the rights back, they were not happy what Elliot did with the King of Fighter franchise, the direction. They did not like the characters to some extent, especially K49. And you say, why is that? Well, Benimaru is based on Polnareff. Kula is based on a anime character, etc., etc., etc. But why is there a problem with K49? A lot of people theorizes it because it wasn't their creation. SNK didn't create K49. Remember, it was Elliot. So that's why, despite the character, that's a lot of people were theorizing, because this is like, we don't like it. To a point that, again, a lot of people are saying it, they were trying to retcon, erase, cancel K49. And some people on YouTube showed, like an example, like in SNK Encyclopedia, to a point that they blacked out K49. And in K5 14, they kind of shadowed him because, again, they don't want to acknowledge the guy. And that's, again, a lot of confusion. So Playmore despised the character to some extent. Higher up, they did not like K49 because they think it's a cheap ripoff of Akira, unoriginal, which is sure, whatever, because beside like Benimaru to Jean-Paul Polnareff, Akira to K49, it blatantly is a video game version of Akira, so touche there. But again, the Elliot love Akira. Playmore did not like K49 to a point that they were trying to erase him. They're trying to acknowledge him, basically not acknowledging the character. And when you're trying to do an interview with Playmore, they're like, who? Who's K49? What is that? You just make it up. The idea behind it is that they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to acknowledge K49. They just want to forget K49, which is, again, just like the Virtual Boy. Never forget. You created it. Live with it. It exists. So don't be woosy about it and say, what are we? I never heard of that character. Because they were doing that. That was Playmore. So that's why they didn't like K49. It wasn't so much of, with their fear of lawsuit, because there wasn't. Again, the people behind Akira were cool with it. But Playmore just hated the character all the way. That's the reason why you never seen him in the Crimson Saga, which is, again, kind of understand because it's really not about Ness. So that's what Playmore, that's why they hated K49. Moving to entertainment. So there's been a lot of history about it. Again, it goes back to, are they worried because they might get sued? Well, to some extent, not so much. But there have been a lot of hindsight hit that, because just in case if the people that own Akira, they change manager and stuff, and the new people didn't know the situation, they might say, wait a minute, did SNK just copyright us? Or we don't like that. They might do something, so they were like trying to just protect themselves. But again, like I said, there was no lawsuit whatsoever. That the people behind Akira, the production, they had no intent to sue SNK for it. But SNK Entertainment at this point were like, okay, let's be safe about it. That's why they've been joke like, well, we don't know what happened to K49. Even the community manager, Kaiserway, basically telling a story that they're not even allowed to talk about K49. They can't acknowledge K49 to some extent. But in the end of the day, apparently because of Krohnen, according to Kaiserwave again, he said, yeah, a lot of the things that we talk about how we not acknowledging K49 or we pretend that it doesn't exist, yeah, we had to lie about that because, well, we're kind of trying to protect our IP and we want to protect the surprise that he's going to be back. Because remember, like I said before, one of my shadow expectations that I wish I want both Ash Crimson back and K49, and they did that. They did that, so that's why I'm happy about it. I'm not a K49 player, but I just like the concept behind of K49 because he is the true rival to K, but I'll explain that later there. So, yeah, so entertainment, we're trying to be coy, secretive about it because I get the reason is to basically set up to, guess what, who's coming back in King Final 15? K49 or Krohnen. So, yeah, so a lot of this thing about, they're going to get sued, never happened, no intention from them. But at the same time, like I said, Playmore hated the character. Entertainment, on the other hand, is that they're probably doing a workaround, but at the same time, they're trying to just keep themselves safe because maybe that 5% chance that when the production for Akira they have a different manager, they might not know the history behind it and said, okay, we don't like this, we're going to sue X and K. But to some extent, no intent, like I said before there. So, before I move on about the lore for K49, one last recap for this is Playmore hated the character, did not concerned about lawsuit. They just don't like the character because they did not create it themselves. They think it's an original. Entertainment just kind of keep it like a secret to some extent once they're ready to reveal the character. So they were being coy about, oh, we're not a fan of K49, or we have to keep it secret, we don't want to get sued, whatever. None of it had happened. Some people were just throwing it there, and then either SNK probably just trying to poke fun of that, like, yeah, whatever. But in the end of the day, like Kaiserwave said, they lied about it because they were planning to bring back K49. There you go. So that's about the history of the behind the scene of K49. No lawsuit. People just, the company don't like it, and the other company just said, yeah, we're just keeping it a secret. And I'm gonna stop here about Krohnen. So next time, I'm gonna give my thoughts on the lore of Krohnen and what's the deal, what's the relation between King of Fighters 2001 to King of Fighters 15. So stay tuned for that.